Some of you have already started on your assignment, the story of pollination that's due today. If there are some things that you're not understanding, I encourage you to pay attention to this lesson today. And if this class ends a little bit before time, I'm going to take questions at the end about that story of pollination assignment specifically. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. So I want us to start our class where we left off with it yesterday. We want to remember that pollination within a plant's flower is the sexual reproduction method for creating offspring for plants. We want to remember there are 4 main steps: attraction, pollination, fertilization, which may be a new word to you, and germination, another new word. You're going to make sure you have this in your notes or you have the recorded lesson ready, because in your assignments for today, you're going to be asked more about each of these steps. We want to remember that attraction is that beautiful smell and the colorful petals from the flower that attracts or makes animals want to come to that flower to grab its nectar, to pollinate it. Pollination is when the pollen from one anther of a flower reaches the stigma of another flower. Okay, remember, there can be either, and you're going to see this actually today in your gizmo, there can be self-pollination. We want to remember that the flower has already the male and the female parts there to create offspring. It has both. So a flower can self-pollinate. That means its own anther transfers pollen to its stigma, or it can cross-pollinate. That means the pollen from one flower will move to the stigma of another flower. We saw that yesterday in our stop motion video. Fertilization is the sperm from the pollen reaching the egg that's in the ovary at the base, at the bottom of our flower, and creating an offspring or a child. We want to make sure that we know the tube that connects the stigma to the ovary is called the style. And that sperm from the pollen is going to travel down that style. Finally, and we're going to talk more about this step today in our class, is germination. Germination, that word starts with a G. Germination means growth, specifically plant growth. So let's look at these 6 steps that you should have drawn in your notebook. And I want to focus in on some things. When I looked at your assignment that a lot of you are missing, you got these 2 steps mixed up. Let me use my pointer. You got step 2 and step 3 mixed up. And so when you're answering these questions, when you're dragging and dropping your choices, it's going to be important that you're looking at this. I didn't use the same words on purpose, because I want you to understand pollination, not just be able to match and drag and drop. So when we're talking here, look at step 2. This is attraction at step 1. Step 2, the bee smells that flower and it goes in to get the nectar. Nectar is step 2. Grabbing the nectar is step 2. Step 3, that's when the pollen is going to get brushed on that on the fur of that bee. Step 4, he's now going to start to spread that pollen to other plants, spreading that pollen to other plants. And step 5, he returns to his hive with that nectar. It's important for us to be able to look at each of these steps and identify where attraction is happening, where pollination is happening, and where fertilization is happening. I knew I had an extra finger. And where germination is occurring. So step 1 is going to be attraction. This is where attraction is happening. Step 2 This is going to be where pollination happens. Okay, this is where he's going in to get that nectar. Step 3 is going to be pollination and fertilization. I say that because that pollen is going to land on the stigma, pollination, and then the sperm from that pollen is going to reach the eggs inside the ovary, fertilization. So this step here, step 3, is really an example of pollination, then fertilization. And then at the very end, you don't get to see germination here because we don't get to see what happens with the plant, but we're going to start talking about what happens next. Now we have the fertilized egg or new seed. What happens next? What does germination look like? Please write this in your notes, the role of fruit. And I'm going to give you some time today to write these notes because it's going to be important that you, one, write down both of these bulleted steps, both steps here. And then you're going to draw one picture of fruit with seeds in it. Let me be clear. You do not have to draw all of these fruits with their seeds in it. Choose one of them, label the type of fruit it is, and draw the seed or seeds inside. We're going to talk today about the job of the fruit. In your pollination gizmo today, you're going to be able to see how fruit helps with germination or the plant being able to grow. Please take some time to start writing this down. Ms. Neville will start talking again in a second. So as we're talking here, it's important for us to know, step 1 here, the fruit forms after the petals from the flower fall off, and it looks like the flower has died. It actually has, because the flower has done its job. The flower has attracted and helped to pollinate and fertilize a new plant. So once that flower begins to die, a fruit will form. The fruit will form around that ovary that was holding those ovules. Those ovules that used to be eggs now have sperm, so they're now seeds. So little baby seeds are going to start to form, or are actually going to be in the middle of the fruit, and the fruit will form around those seeds. Step 2, the fruit rots. The fruit will begin to rot, or one of us will eat that fruit, and the seed will begin to germinate. Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit gross here, but I'm a science teacher, so I have to talk about it. So as the fruit rots, if no one ever eats that fruit, if an animal never comes around, the fruit's going to rot, and the seeds will be left there to dig deep in the ground, like we see happening in this GIF here. Another thing we want to talk about is, what if one of us eats the fruit? Well, when we eat that fruit, we're going to defecate or poop. And when we poop out that fruit, we're going to poop out those seeds. And those seeds, that poop is going to be able to give those seeds the stuff it needs to grow. And that's going to help make a plant. Okay, and so the fruit is very important in helping, not only to help the seed grow, but to spread to different places by animal defecation. I'll give you a little while longer to finish this up until about 12:45, and then we'll move on. just a reminder, I'm giving you 2 more minutes to finish these notes. But remember, this lesson is being recorded. So if we go too fast, you can go back and watch this lesson again to get any information you may have missed. Take another 2 minutes.
Miss Neville.
Yes, ma'am.
The last picture that you showed me, of the 6 different pink flowers with the bee, did we have to draw that?
That does need to be in your notes, Emma, but that's already in Schoology in the orange folder. I believe it's called Notes 2, Pollination. And so you can get that picture later on, and it'll help you with the story of pollination assignment.
Nice.
Take another minute, guys, to finish up here.
Miss Neville.
Yes.
What time will you release the recorded lesson?
As soon as this class is over, sweetie, I'll pop it up. Okay, so we're moving on. So let's take a look, because you're going to be having to work on a lab report today. And so I want to make sure you understand what a lab report looks like as you complete your pollination assignment today, and you look at a really cool way to do a lab. Let me share my screen with you. Please turn your cameras off. Please turn your camera off. So in your notes today, it's going to be notes 3. You're going to be looking at or copying down, or if you have a printer at home, printing out this lab report template and putting it in your notes. The word template, for our purposes, we can use as sample. So a template shows you what something is supposed to look like. When you get to 7th and 8th grade, your teachers will teach you how to write lab reports. And if some of you go to college, the long lab reports that you'll do in college are nothing like these little ones that you'll learn in 6th grade. So there are some important parts of a template that we need to know about. The first part of a template or of a lab report, let me start by first telling you what a lab report is. You know how in math you have to show your work? A lab report is a way for a scientist to show their work. Let's say a scientist is making a huge breakthrough, like the cure for cancer, or the scientists who have made some really good medicines for diabetes or AIDS. All of those, they had to write lab reports or show their work. Want to know why? It's because other scientists may want to do what they did. So I need to know exactly what materials you used, exactly what questions you were asking, exactly what procedures you followed. So a lab report for a scientist is really important, because if your lab is successful in making a huge breakthrough, you want to share how you did it with the world. So we're looking at a very basic 6th grade lab report. And when we look at this lab report, we see the purpose of a lab. This is the first part of our lab. And this is a sentence that you write that basically tells why you did the lab. What were you looking for? Okay, so that's the question we're really trying to answer when we write the purpose of our lab. It's usually no more than 1 to 2 sentences. A testable question is the second part of a lab. That's the question that our lab will work to answer. That's the reason why we're doing the lab. So, for example, a testable question could be, how many paper clips can the magnet attract? Okay, you notice I'm doing a lab to answer that question. You'll also sometimes hear Ms. Neville refer to testable question as TQ. The third part of a lab report is your hypothesis. You may have heard of hypothesis before when you were in elementary school. A hypothesis, as you've heard, is an educated guess. But what's more, Ms. Neville wants to add to what you know about the hypothesis. The hypothesis also answers your testable question. So as you're working to complete this testable question to make a lab, you want to write what you think will happen. What's the answer, the guess to that testable question? So an example that Ms. Neville provided for you here, you'll notice that a hypothesis always starts with an if-then statement. So the example Ms. Neville provided for you here is, if the magnet is close to the pile of paper clips, then it will attract 10 paper clips. So when we're looking here, we see that this hypothesis is a guess, but it also answers our testable question. The materials are the supplies that you used. You want to be specific here. You don't want to just say, I used a pencil. How many pencils did you use? You want to say, I used an eraser. How big was the eraser? How many erasers did you use? You want to be specific in your descriptions, in your list of things. Another thing about a materials list is that it needs to look like a grocery store list, like a list that your mom or dad take to the grocery store to buy things. Okay? How many do you need and what did you get? What did you use? Procedures come next. Those are the steps that explain how the experiment was conducted. What did you do? Step 1, step 2, step 3. And for a 6th grade experiment, you'll usually have no more than 5 steps for your procedures. The last part of your lab report will be the conclusion. Now, this isn't a conclusion statement like you would write in English, okay, with you tell what happens in the end. It's not that simple. The conclusion tells if your hypothesis was correct or incorrect and why. So, my hypothesis was correct because the magnet did pick up 10 paper clips. My hypothesis was incorrect because the magnet only picked up 7 paper clips. Do you see what I mean? So let's talk about what your assignments will be for today. Janiyah, I need you to turn your camera off, please. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, so let's talk about what your assignment's going to be today. When we go to our Schoology class, in the orange folder, everything that we talked about today is going to be in your notebook. I mean, in the orange folder already. I'm sorry, I misspoke. The picture of the pink flowers, the 6 boxes, that's going to be in notes 2, the pollination of plants. And the lab report that you just saw Ms. Neville had in her Word document, that's going to be right here. Remember, you can choose to copy that lab report right in your science notebook. It should take up a full page. Or you can just get your mom or dad to print it off if you have a printer at home. Now, the two assignments that you're going to be working on today that I'm going to make published to you now is the flower pollination gizmo and the pollination, there we go, the Pollination Lab Report. This will be your first experience with a lab report. Let's look first at what you're supposed to do with the flower pollination gizmo. With the flower pollination gizmo, you're going to click on this link, explorelearning.com, and you're going to sign in to your gizmo account. Some kids got lost here, so I want to walk through to you what you need to do after that. So once you log in, you're going to go to, at the side, you're going to see Ms. Neville has sent out your flower pollination. Let me make sure I have. Yep. Your flower pollination lab. You're going to click on it, or you can go right there to launch. And when we launch it, you have that open, and you want to have it open in a tab. Your next tab is your Schoology tab, and you're going to download this worksheet. This worksheet you're going to complete, okay? Make sure you enable editing. You're going to complete this worksheet using the flower pollination gizmo. You will also answer the 5 questions below, okay? Let's walk through exactly what you're supposed to do here. I don't want anyone confused as to what they're supposed to do with this gizmo. So please follow along with Miss Neville. It's going to ask for you to use your mouse to move some pollen to the stigma. That's what I did. I dragged it there. Then it's going to ask for me, I'm looking for the directions over here. It's going to ask for me to click the style. That sperm is traveling down the style. Then it's going to ask for me to drag the sperm cells into the eggs. Guys, you are fertilizing a flower right now. And you got that done. The next thing it's going to ask you to do, the directions are going to be on the left side of your screen, to click on the petals, because the petals fall off. The plant dies. And then you'll see the formation of a fruit. Be sure to read over here about the job of the fruit, okay? I'm then going to click start over, and I can also choose cross-pollination. You'll notice cross-pollination has 2 flowers because the pollen is being transferred from one flower to another one, or self-pollination, where the flower is able to pollinate itself, okay? You're going to answer those 5 questions that are below it. All of the answers you can do, as long as you're making sure that you're doing this as well. You're going to complete the worksheet here that you need to download, and you're going to submit that worksheet here. That's your first assignment, the flower pollination gizmo. Your second assignment, I need everyone listening, is the Pollination Lab Report. Let's go to preview. You're going to watch this video of 2 scientists pollinating using cheese puffs. It's really cool to watch. And as you watch them do that video, you're going to complete your own lab report. Let's see how you'll do that. You'll see the lab report here. Looks very familiar to the one that you're copying or printing out. And you're going to drag each part of the lab report to the correct place. You're dragging each part of the lab report to its correct location. Remember, with both of these assignments, you get 2 attempts. You make sure you know these assignments aren't due until Friday, but you want to be working on them the rest of the week. Tomorrow, I'm not assigning any new assignments so that you'll have time to work on these 2 big assignments that are expected of you. If you don't have any questions, please leave the class.